Batman, you got any moves besides choking people out? The following is an in-depth story analysis. If you haven't seen this film, you might want to before watching this review. Batman is one of the single most popular characters for fan films, probably the most popular character for superhero fan films, and for a lot of good reasons. First, he's the most popular solo superhero, period. Secondly, he's one of the easiest to translate to film because he doesn't have any powers and he operates in a gritty world, so a minimal dirtiness and lack of polish is a plus if you want to tell a dark urban Batman story. That's one of the things the Casey Jones movie really had going for it. If you want your world to look authentically grimy, you almost have to work harder to hide those millions of dollars in a big budget movie, whereas something made on a shoestring budget immediately earns some credibility if the look of the film reflects the environment, provided it's still competently shot and well acted. And lastly, a lot of Batman fans have been dissatisfied with Hollywood's efforts to translate Batman to screen, and they have a sometimes you just have to do it yourself attitude. With so much passion for the character, they're willing to sacrifice countless hours of creative energy and hard unpaid work to make the closest thing to what they've been craving come to life. As I've mentioned before, there's certainly some notoriety that can come from a well-received, highly viewed fan film that might lead to real paying commercial work. I don't think every fan film is made with the humblest of intentions, solely art for the sake of art, and without big hopes and dreams that one thing might eventually lead to another. And I personally see nothing wrong with talented people using these sorts of non-profit projects to get themselves noticed. But I do think that those dreams are often, in the moment, secondary to a labor of love, and perhaps sometimes those aspirations come only after fulfilling a burning desire to see what you're longing for come to life. Everyone has his own personal idea of what Batman is and what he should be, as there have been so many iterations of the character. I'd almost go as far as to say you couldn't put two Batman fans in a room together and get exactly the same description of the definitive Batman, any more than two pie aficionados would agree on the perfect recipe for French silk. Sure, plenty of people would say the animated series Batman is my Batman, but if you probe deeper, would they all come up with the same reasons as to why, or even interpret who that character is in the same way? Even when Hollywood has given us 20 wildly different big screen adaptations of the Caped Crusader, there will still be dissatisfied fans making fan films because the vision in their heads of the perfect Batman has never quite been depicted on film. And yet, somewhat perplexingly, a lot of fan films seem focused on remarkably similar things, creating a more adult, rated-R type Batman world, doing a live-action adaptation of Mark Hamill's Joker, commenting on the moral dilemma of whether Batman should kill, creating a more stylized comic book world than the Nolan films, using as many of Batman's other rogues as possible, and going to Arkham Asylum. To be fair, of course, some of these are just as in vogue in actual licensed Batman works. Some of these are things I think some people really are missing in their big-budget Batman movies, and some are just trendy. Perhaps some of these repeated tropes are fan filmmakers trying to one-up each other. They have similar views of what they'd like to see, but each new filmmaker thinks he can outdo the last. But sometimes it's hard for me to take some of these films seriously, because I've seen some of these things so many times they're becoming almost cliche, and I am baffled that the first thing an amateur filmmaker does isn't to see what the permeating tropes are and try to subvert them. Because there really are myriad ways to realize Batman on screen that I think haven't even been attempted in fan films yet. City of Scars is one that really pushed the envelope for how comic book a Batman film can look and not come off as silly, taking somewhat of a Sin City approach in style. It's made by Bat in the Sun Studios, which is known for its amazing costumes and props. They've done a number of Batman films and have become known lately for their crossover fight videos. Obviously, those aren't full-fledged stories, and they're just about seeing who would win in a brawl, but the production values are mind-boggling. The Batman vs. Darth Vader video is one of the most impressive fan shorts I've ever seen. Boy, would I enjoy to see the story leading up to it. City of Scars does an incredible amount with its humble $27,000 budget. It's a stylized, atmospheric world that sucks me right in. I believe the scope of Gotham City, the power and presence of Batman, and the darkness and violence of this exaggerated, nearly dystopian City. It's a great argument for a more traditional Batsuit on screen. There's no armor, no rubber, but I can take it seriously within the context of this heightened world. Anyone who still thinks a Batman in tights looks silly on screen, no matter what, needs to see this film. Director Aaron Schoenke is incredibly resourceful in finding creative ways to create brilliant rooftop scenes, to take us inside Arkham Asylum and even into the Batcave, and to make it believable. It's also neat to see an original Batcycle, Batsuit, and a completely new Bat symbol, segmented no doubt to reflect the scars in the title. All this from scratch design provides a uniqueness to this Batman. I can certainly see some of what inspired it, but just like Burton or Nolan before him, Schoenke has successfully separated himself from the pack by giving his Batman a fresh look and flavor. This Gotham reminds me of Burton's. The tone and themes are right out of the Arkham Asylum game. This was before City, but I'd be very surprised if the first game wasn't a major influence. Batman sounds more like Kevin Conroy than anything, but he narrates a little like Frank Miller's, and he doesn't do that distracting Christian Bale growl. And the Joker is an odd cross between Mark Hamill, Jack Nicholson, and the hyena-like Joker from The Batman. I like the choice to have the Joker sometimes speak in a low, creepy bass voice. Totally threw me off guard the first time I heard it. It's disturbing and a great juxtaposition for the Hamill-esque voice he's using the rest of the time. I especially like bomb pops. Those are my favorite. I have my reservations about this Joker portrayal, mostly that he's too young for this way late in Batman's career sort of story, and I don't always believe I'm looking at a demented psychopath and not an actor pretending to be a demented psychopath, but I like his extreme register shift a lot, and I have to give the movie a lot of props for its realization of Scarface. Jay Caputo is perfect as the sniveling Wesker, and also voicing his dominant authoritarian dummy personality. Fans have always questioned whether Scarface could be convincingly realized on the big screen, and there's nothing silly or campy about this version. The first time I saw this movie, my biggest disappointment was that the ventriloquist wasn't the lead villain. City of Scars is an absolute visual tour de force, and has been a huge game changer in the world of fan films. I had never seen anything fan-made that looked quite this professional before this, but ever since it was released in 2010, new, bold films based on all sorts of fictional properties have begun popping up with better and better production values, continuing to push the envelopes of looking cinematic on a relatively shoestring budget. But where the film is lacking, as is so often the case with fan projects, is in the quality of its storytelling. It's surprisingly how beloved and influential it's become while embracing so many of those tropes and cliches I listed before. There's a really simple, subtle short film in here somewhere about a child who becomes a killer because Batman won't kill the man who killed the child's parents. Someone Batman feels responsible for, it doesn't have to be the Joker necessarily, kills a boy's parents just like Bruce's parents were killed, and the boy blames Batman almost more than he blames the murderer. The boy kills the murderer at the end, and the audience is left wondering if Batman does more harm than good, as he's created the very thing he's trying to avoid becoming by not killing. Or if the boy is in the right and is just doing what Batman always should have done in the first place. The question is, should Batman sacrifice his own humanity for the greater good? But if you're not human anymore, how can you know if what you're doing is helping the world to be a better place or not? I really love that premise and how personal it is for Bruce Wayne to put a kid in that situation. I also really like how it's played at the end, minus the fact that it's the Joker the boy kills, and minus Batman's long-winded speech that makes an analysis of that part of the movie totally pointless. This is a movie that kind of analyzes its own themes and ideas, leaving me with little to do but praise what I like and scratch my head at Joker's baffling master plan. All the moral questions are inherent in the situation. We don't need a page of internalizing from Batman at the end to spell out all the philosophical stuff. I'm not even sure Batman needs to say much of anything in this film. His actions and his tortured expressions say it all. While the should Batman kill story is perhaps as tired as Mr. Freeze's ice puns in Batman and Robin, exploring the questions of whether Gotham would be a better or worse off place without Batman, and whether Batman is as out to lunch as the nutcases he puts away, is always potentially interesting. It's equal to the does humanity depend too much on Superman dilemma we delved into last week. But this movie overstates its premise and falls into the trap of being overly ambitious. It takes too big of a gamble by killing the Joker at the end without earning it, because I don't have a clear enough sense of who this version of the Joker is or what his relationship is with Batman, and because everything the movie wants to say about Batman's psychology and his internal struggle, I think can be said without it. I've honestly overthought this story to the point of wondering if I'm giving it too much credit by trying to figure out what exactly the Joker is getting at with his scheme and the clues he's leaving Batman. It's a simple, straightforward series of events, but I'm a little confused on what exactly the Joker is trying to accomplish and what the heck he's getting at with the symbolic imagery of his crime. It could be said he's just insane, and I'm reading too far into it by even attempting to decipher it. But A, some of it is too on the nose not to assume it's all supposed to fit together neatly somehow. And B, Batman's monologue at the end suggests that there's always a point to the Joker's crimes. Now, things don't exactly go according to the Joker's plan. More on that in a minute. Batman is as confused as I am when the Joker dies. Had this all ended up the way Joker anticipated, maybe the final punchline would tie the whole scheme together. But if that's the case, if it's supposed to be a mystery, it strikes me as an awkward choice in a half-an-hour short film, and I'm not sure what it adds to the narrative beyond some disturbing weirdness and just generically helping it feel more like an authentic serial killer plot, complete with planted evidence and bizarre metaphors. The Joker has put an Arkham nurse in the hospital, a smile permanently glued to her face thanks to Joker toxin, all to get Batman's attention and deliver this message. The zebra has escaped from the zoo to feast on the blood of the lion. Joker has also written, "Happy 4th of July, Bats." Immediately we have two pretty clear symbols mashed together to evoke the ideas of independence through vengeance on an oppressive king that doesn't deserve to rule. When Joker tells Congressman Johnson's son the story of the zebra and the lion, he says that the lion ruled unfairly, and so the zebra bit his head off. On my initial viewing, I was a little confused as to who kills whom in the story. This film unfortunately falls into the typical fan film pitfall of clunky writing quite a bit, and this is a good example, because Joker uses an ambiguous pronoun when he says, "and then he bit his head off." Any English teacher worth his salt would circle that clause and write in the margin, "You need an antecedent. Who bit whose head off?" This might sound like a minor quibble, but this metaphor is the only clue I have to Joker's goals. If the lion bit the zebra's head off, then the Joker must be trying to goad Batman into killing him, much like Ledger's version did in The Dark Knight when he tried to prove that all men are slaves to their base nature and that Batman is as corruptible as anyone. Of course, that's not what the film is actually doing, but everything actually would come together better if that were the case. Then it would be Batman's independence Joker is referring to by setting his scheme on Independence Day, trying to liberate Batman from his own conscience and give him what he most yearns for, the means to make sure what happened to him as a child never happens to anyone else. That would have meant Joker would understand Batman's psychology on a personal level, that he would know what buttons he'd have to press to get Batman closest to wanting to kill him. He'd have to know Bruce Wayne was Batman because his scheme in killing a young boy's parents hit so close to home. But on second viewing, I realized that couldn't be the case. Joker blatantly casts himself as the zebra, and according to the wall at the beginning, he wants to kill the lion. I guess Batman is Scar from The Lion King, the dark lion who perpetuates chaos through poor management and an obsession with control. Yeah, Scar. Bizarre coincidence. Anyway, my mind went in a lot of really fascinating directions when I tried to read this the first time and realized I had some of my facts wrong. I don't think what's actually here is nearly as interesting as what I thought might be going on. All the evidence points to the Joker simply wanting Batman dead, and probably hitting so close to home with the kid on accident. After all, if he knew who Batman was, wouldn't he kill both of the kid's parents right in front of him? And all the stuff about Batman making things worse, all the characters who represent Gotham's scars, are all incidental and unintentional on the Joker's part. He's played up as the thoughtful Joker, trying to teach Batman something about himself and using Gotham as his jungle gym to play with his favorite playmate. But while I don't see a lot of this in the way Joker is written or acted, he's apparently fed up with the cycle and wants to break it for some reason. Harley tells Batman that he's always at the top of Joker's dance card, and when she tries to insist that Joker always returns to Arkham for her, Batman tells her Joker comes back because he, quote, can't help himself, implying that Joker is always in complete control, and when one of his performances plays out, he goes back home to plan his next one, and Harley just happens to be there. He doesn't really care about her. So what has changed? Why is Joker apparently as tired of Batman perpetuating the status quo as Montoya is when she says Gotham is sick of Batman's conscience, and so am I? The zebra obviously represents black and white, and the lion is a color closer to gray. Batman walks that line, while the Joker wants to destroy the line and personify bad and good at the same time. I think. For the Joker, there's no difference. In a lot of Batman stories, it's Batman's conscience and his refusal to change that challenges and fascinates the Joker. The Joker often sees he and Batman as perfect opposites who define each other. Each exists relative to the other so he can better understand who he is. You have to taste sweet to gauge sour, healthy to gauge sick, right to gauge wrong. And often, Batman can't help but see it the same way. There's often a question of whether Batman refuses to kill the Joker because, in a twisted way, the Joker really does complete him, as he says in The Dark Knight. Or if Batman is really afraid, he'll become something worse than the Joker because that line between vigilante and killer is, as Batman says in this film, the last shred of humanity he has left. But I don't want to just project what I know about Batman from other things onto this movie. The trouble is, I don't know nearly enough about this version of the Joker and what his relationship with Batman is. In a way, this watches like the third act of a movie I haven't seen the rest of. Perhaps their relationship isn't nearly as complex here as it is in other places, like, say, the Arkham games. And by the way, I kinda wish I hadn't reviewed Arkham City before this, as it has the time and scope to really flesh out this relationship and earn the Joker's death at the end, and it's really hard not to compare them, as unfair as that is. I don't know if this Batman holds himself responsible for creating the Joker, or even if he's indirectly responsible for any of the other villains that represent Gotham's scars. Maybe the assumption is supposed to be that you wouldn't have any of these costume baddies without Batman, and maybe he should just hang up his cape and Gotham will automatically be safer without him. But how can I be sure? There's plenty of inner monologue via an ongoing journal entry, a la Rorschach and Watchmen, about Batman wrestling with whether or not Gotham would be a better place if he let himself go, and essentially just become the Punisher. But there's nothing about that Nolan idea of escalation, how much damage Batman's inaction has already caused. Sure, he's put Joker in Arkham countless times, and Joker keeps killing people whenever he gets out, but does Batman feel responsible for Scarface and Zsasz and Harley Quinn in the same way? Are these other characters here for any real purpose beyond just getting some more Batman characters in here the filmmakers really wanted to use? Perhaps they're meant to be part of Joker's message to Batman. I don't have enough information to be sure whether Joker's saying anything by putting Batman in these characters' paths. He clearly knew Batman was going to see at least Harley Quinn and Scarface, if not Zsasz, since he gave each of them a location that would get Batman closer to the Joker. Batman doesn't have to do any sleuthing in this at all. He goes to Harley, she leads him to Scarface, then Scarface leads Batman to the Joker, and if Joker wanted to be sure Batman was at the carnival when the bomb blew up, why didn't he just give Batman a more direct route? What was the point of the padded out, almost 60s Batman approach? Again, I don't know what Joker's trying to accomplish. Did he expect Batman to be there at the exact moment the bomb blew up? Was that how he intended on killing Batman, if that was his plan? It doesn't really fit with the whole biting the lion's head off bit. Was he just trying to create more chaos to draw Batman out in case he couldn't get the information from the ventriloquist? Or maybe he planned on killing Batman in some figurative way, like the way he killed the Bat family in Death of the Family, but it never plays out because we don't know what his endgame with the kid is. If this whole scheme was Joker's grand plan for finally finishing Batman off, to prove to Batman he should have killed him when he had the chance, maybe to show him that he's created the very insanity that's about to take over without his intervention, well, it's not very grand. It plays like a really standard, meandery, random Joker plot. So at the end, the Joker, who we're led to believe has basically never lost when fighting Batman, that he's always 20 steps ahead and only gets captured and goes back to Arkham when he feels like it, unless he just acts like he always gets put away on purpose to preserve his image, and he's really just good at escaping. He can't keep a kid tied up in an ice cream truck, and what's worse, he leaves a loaded gun within arm's reach of the kid. Really? This Joker would be way more calculating than that, and his supposed brilliance is instantly deflated. Batman goes on at the end about how there's always been a point to Joker's schemes, and this one feels anticlimactic. Well, yeah, he got totally blindsided by a little kid. At first, I thought maybe this was the Joker's endgame all along, but the way it's acted and shot, it's clear that the Joker is caught completely off guard. Joker gets angry when he finds the empty ropes, and he's all by himself, so he's not performing for anyone, and he pretends his gun is fake while preparing to kill the kid with it, obviously out of self-preservation. I really think Schoenke wanted to play out the classic should Batman kill the Joker story with a twist, and he stumbled onto a fresh take on that moral question that he's just not taking full advantage of. Because it looks so spectacular, it feels like it wants a grandiose situation to match, but less is definitely more in this case. It's almost like an employee who's already gotten the job but keeps sucking up to the boss. The world looks amazing, there's no need to overcompensate with a bloated story that presumptuously tries to shock its audience by ending with a giant status quo change. I'm not even saying that couldn't work, and even in this context, if this were played up from the beginning as the final Joker-Batman story ever, and the Joker did this all on purpose, where he didn't have to be made to look stupid just to contrive a way to kill him off at the end, I might buy into it, because the idea of the Joker secretly knowing exactly what makes Batman tick, creating the anti-Batman by letting himself get gunned down in front of Batman by a kid, is fantastic. Or the very same idea could be played out with the Joker, but without killing him at all, if Batman had to stop the kid from killing the Joker at the end. Imagine how much more the kid would hate Batman, and I love his delivery of "why didn't you save my parents," by the way, if he not only blamed Batman for not preventing his parents' murder, but also was robbed of his revenge by Batman in his attempt to save the kid from becoming a killer. And as always, I don't want to rewrite the thing. Those are just a couple of ideas that came to me in how you might keep this as a Joker story, but not make the Joker feel so generic and absent-minded. The movie is working really hard to make the Joker feel necessary, because obviously he'd be the bad guy Batman would be most tempted to kill. And I do appreciate the effort. It's really cool the climax is shot at a carnival, all the trappings look great, the Joker is sufficiently disturbing. I do really appreciate the idea of Joker being killed by a kid put in the Bruce Wayne situation, representing what maybe he should have done all along. But again, I don't think the movie quite earns that because of how contrived the death feels. There was a follow-up movie in 2011 called Seeds of Arkham, and if City of Scars was intended as the first in a series, I certainly couldn't begrudge its killing the Joker. It would be really interesting to explore a world without the Joker and to delve into how that would affect Batman's psychology. We're about to see that very story in Arkham Knight, the Arkham City sequel. Man, it is getting to the point where the word Arkham is almost as recognizable as Batman. Maybe this isn't an unfinished piece, but just a pilot. Batman and Joker's relationship could be explored post-mortem, and what the heck the Joker was getting at could be revealed down the road, so that the Joker's presence is felt long after his death, like in the Arkham Unhinged one-shot that takes place right after Joker dies in Arkham City, but he has contingencies in place so he can keep getting the last laugh even after death. As a standalone film, it's trying to cram too much in half an hour. It can't provide enough context for me to really get what its Joker is doing, and it seems worried I won't get what it's trying to say about Batman, so Batman keeps telling me exactly what the movie is about, rather than telling a simpler story, conveying the same ideas, and allowing the action to play them out. It's a valiant effort, though. I may seem overly critical, but what I do is primarily story analysis. It's a really entertaining and awesome spectacle. I've seen it 4 times now, partly just because I enjoy the atmosphere and I'm really impressed with Kevin Porter's Batman. He does a great tortured Batman and really pulls off the Bruce Wayne playboy look, but still makes sense as a gritty vigilante by night. He strikes me as what George Clooney might have been like if he'd actually been on board with a dark Batman and been in a movie that played him that way. Or maybe it's just the chin. I also love the haunting and melodic City of Scars song performed by Madeline Ray. I've had it stuck in my head the entire time working on this review. Despite all my issues with the story, I'm going to give City of Scars a 2.5 out of 4. Drop out all that extraneous voiceover, make the Joker and Batman's dynamic clearer, and center the focus more on that kid, and it'd be closer to a 4.